DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Full-time in Hamilton between the All Blacks and France, 29-19 the final score to New Zealand. They win the series 3-0, 19-17 to the French at half-time. A first half in many ways to forget, I think, for New Zealand. Maybe that's being a little bit harsh. Not too sure. Much better second half, particularly those final 20 minutes for New Zealand. 4 tries to 1 they scored. So France only got over our try line. When I say our, I mean New Zealand, obviously. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan. I'm a Kiwi sports fan, so I am going to say our a lot. But France getting their one and only try in the 9th minute of this test. And built up, just looking at the numbers here, built up a 10-0 lead after 20 minutes. And those first 20 minutes were very ordinary for New Zealand. But we've had 3 tests. We've had 3 games to look at and really assess where this All Black team is at. Look, the July Test series is always a little bit untidy from New Zealand. You sort of hope to see development of sorts once you get to that 3rd test. I got to say, out of all 3 performances from a New Zealand perspective, this one was without a doubt the worst. I hate to say that because you'd like to think that the 3rd one's the best. Dunedin, shoddy, and then it got to a point in that first half where things went the All Blacks' way. Second test in Wellington, it was that bit amplified. Not a great start, and then they just kicked into gear, New Zealand, and really put the French to the sword. Tonight in Hamilton, really the opposite. France got out to such a great start, as they had done really through all 3 tests, very much the first and 3rd tests. And then they started to play really smartly, France. They started to apply a bit of scoreboard pressure, penalty goals, drop kicks, and their kicking game. This is the main difference for the French. Last week, the kicking game in Wellington was poor. Tonight, it was great. Near perfect, I'd argue. Their in-play kicking was really, really good, and it pressured New Zealand. But from the All Blacks perspective, from an All Blacks perspective, there was territory-wise, it was pretty even early on. Position-wise, New Zealand could not string phases together and actually maintain the ball and get results with it in hand, which is what we saw them do so well in Wellington. So when they had the ball and they got a bit of momentum, they started to get some results. They did that a little bit in the first test, at the end of the first half again, but this test, it just took them a while to really get into this contest. When they got their first try through, Will Jordan caught his Ratma with a great heads-up play, putting that little kick in, and then managing to give New Zealand an opportunity, thanks to some poor French defence. Clearly, there was some miscommunication from the French players, because if you're looking at their defence, if you're looking at the try line, if you're the All Blacks, you're looking at the try line, you want to score it, and the fullback is way on the right side, and there's clearly meant to be either a winger or a first 5 filling in the gap on the left there, and no one was there. So Ratsma gets the ball, puts in a nice little kick, perfectly weighted kick as well. Will Jordan pounces on it and scores the first try. So from that perspective, a really smart play from New Zealand that got them back into the game, and from there they did start to get some results. It was just a little bit disappointing, I think, to see the moment that they smelt blood, the moment that they did get something going their way, they couldn't take advantage. They did that very well last week in Wellington. The moment that they started to get on the scoreboard, the moment that they built phases, the moment they got some go forward, whether it was close to the ruck or out wide, they piled on the points. Couldn't do that tonight. And that was, is that down to the mass rotations to the 23? Yeah, probably. I mean, you even had one before the game. Luke Jacobson not playing, and then you had Ardie Savea, Sana Penifeno, and Duplessis Karifa making up a loose 4 trio. But for the All Blacks, there was just moments when you felt they could kick into gear, and they just didn't. And this is a team that was always going to be rotated by Scott Robertson and the other selectors. So if you're looking at it from an objective perspective, they adhered to that. They did their job, and some younger players got minutes, and that's all that really mattered. They won all 3 tests. If you're looking for pristine performance, if you're an All Blacks fan, or if you're looking at it and you're hoping to see this team be ruthless in the way that they should be, a bit discouraging, this test in Hamilton. It was the worst of the 3 for New Zealand. I don't think any player really stood out. Will Jordan played really well, but we're at a point with Will Jordan that he plays well in every test. He gets tries, he makes things happen. There was a moment, he had the ball and he managed to kick it. He was running onto it. He managed to keep the ball in play and nearly scored a 1-try, I think it was in the first half. Didn't quite happen. But Will Jordan's got into a point where this guy makes anything happen regardless of where he is on the field, and he's done this for a while. But apart from Will Jordan, Artisavia had a couple of good moments. Artisavia, though, also had a couple of clangers. There was a moment where he knocked the ball on, I think, within our half and gave it away. He put in a chip kick at one point. That was just a bonehead play. That's the best way to describe it. But had a couple of turnovers, had a couple of runs. There was a moment where he had a quick tap and he found some meters pretty quickly for New Zealand that got our attack going. But it's really hard to pick out one player who really stood out, I think. RDSSA had a couple of moments. I thought Duplessis Karifi was better than he was last week. Cortez Ratama, I think, is now at a point where the bloke on the bench tonight, Noah Hotham, is probably, I should be given an extended run as the number 2, number 9 for New Zealand. Noah Hotham had some lovely moments for the second half coming off the bench. But I just think with Cortez Ratama, I think he's had a number of opportunities now and he hasn't quite consistently lit the world on fire, if you will. As I say, a few moments that went his way, but many players for the All Blacks had a couple of moments that went their way. They also had a couple of moments that didn't go their way. So from that perspective, I think Noah Hotham did enough in the second half there coming off the bench to earn that bench spot, probably for that first test against Argentina, which is now like a month away. But New Zealand did kick into gear in the 60th minute round there, so those last 20 minutes were much better. The bench came on. I thought Tavatavanale, again, had some great touches. I want to see this guy start. Will he? Probably not, but he needs to be on the bench, I think, consistently. Hotham, as I say, very good. Brady McAllister had a couple of good moments. I thought his line-out play was pretty good. It's quite accurate. I think one got picked off in the second half, which was like the first one all series. They got picked off because this All Black line-out has been just brilliant. But he also scored a try, which was wonderful to see. And I think that did cap off a pretty good period for New Zealand. Their final 20 minutes, they were the better side. France did start to fall away. The bench didn't quite have the impact that, say, last week's bench had. That bench did really well for France. Reffing, pretty good. I mean, I wasn't too worried about the reffing performance last week. I think this week it was just as good. I actually really liked that Angus Gardner didn't award the Dalton try. I do think Papali'i got it down, but the key is, was there enough evidence to overturn it? That's the key. And there wasn't. So I'm glad that he didn't award the try in the end. Obviously, for Dalton Papali'i's sake, it would have been great to see him score it. Because his form has been pretty ordinary since Scott Robertson took over as All Black coach, both at Super Rugby level and obviously at international level. I don't think Dalton's been that great at all. The thing is, they've got a few other good moves forwards who are starting to move into, they're putting forward a better case to be in the All Blacks than Dalton Papali'i. So, it would have been great to see him score the try. He didn't. Apart from that, he had a few moments, but again, not enough, I don't think, to suggest that he should be ahead of Duplessis Karifi or someone else who would be on the bench filling that backup loose forward role. Set piece again was pretty good from New Zealand. That's their strong point. It really is. Line out time, scrum was pretty good. That is where New Zealand will get the advantage over other teams around the world. But in saying that, who knows? This isn't France's best team. This isn't the Springboks. This isn't Ireland. Will that work against them? I'm not sure. Genuinely not sure. And tonight, if anything, it casts a little more doubt that it actually will, because that was the one thing for New Zealand that went really well, was the line, was the set piece, as it has all series. But apart from that, there wasn't a lot that really went our way. The passing game out wide, we may spread the ball out the backs. Last week we got results. This week, no. So that is a bit of a concern. I think, you think about guys like Anton Leon-Brown, Quinta Paya, Ruben Love. No one really had a blinder. Ruben Love had a few good moments. The game didn't really find him as much as I thought it would. I really thought we'd see quite a good game from Ruben Love. The only negative I can think is he had an opportunity to pass the ball to Sevu Reece, who I'll get to in a sec, by the way, Sevu Reece. And he didn't, and I think it would have been a certain try. But apart from that, Ruben Love didn't do anything wrong, had a couple of good moments, but didn't get enough of the ball. Sevu Reece had a great game. Not as involved, I think, as you would like, but when he was involved, he made a difference. Obviously, there was that play early on when he managed to stay in play, keep the ball alive, and I don't think they scored from it, but they kept the attack going. His play in the second half, they got Karifi, his try was brilliant. That obviously helped us win the game, so a difference-making play from Sevu Reece. This guy is actually in some serious good form, and I would think that if everyone's healthy and everyone's available for selection and playing at sort of an 80 to 100%, sort of bracket of the best. Severis starts, I would say, probably on the left wing. You'd have Will Jordan at fullback. Well, now you'd probably put Sever on the right, wouldn't you? You've got options. Point of Severis is an absolute starter, without a doubt, because he's someone who's been sort of in and out of that starting bubble, if you will. 2019, he was very much one of our starting wingers. I remember again in 2021, he was starting on the left wing quite a bit, but since then hasn't really been in that frame. There's been a few injuries to contend with, but he was awesome tonight, Severis. Fabian Holland continues to do nothing wrong. He just gets through his work, runs the ball, reliable at line-out time. He has been an absolute revelation. His inclusion in the All Blacks has been touted for some time, but he's finally here and he's finally making his mark. So, yeah, underwhelming. I would have preferred to have seen a much better performance from New Zealand. Look, the team was totally changed up, so that contributes a little bit to them not being as lethal as you would hope. France, again, I think is valiant. Their number 8, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Mikel Guillard. This kid's good. He's damn good. He was great in the first test. I remember he scored that try, obviously, and he was good again tonight. This French team has really held their own in this series. So there's no point anyone sitting there saying, well, it's only a B team. Just I probably said that a few minutes ago. But at the same time, they've proven that they're deep enough that they can send a team here that is going to compete. And you could argue they probably should have won this game. But they were better through definitely in the first half. That period from about the 40th to the 55th, 60th minute was up for grabs in many ways. And then the All Blacks sort of put their foot down as they got a bit more of the ball and actually got up to the French 22 a little bit more. But the main takeaway from this test, not the most comforting from a New Zealand perspective. Should have been much better. The series as a whole, I think we could sit there and say, 7 out of 10, they could have been better. Great in parts, untidy in others. The buttoning off, after breaks and play for me is a real concern for New Zealand. They started this test poorly again. They've started all 3 poorly. There's something to work on. But when things go their way, they do look good. Less so tonight than the first 2 tests. But at the end of the day, look, they've won the series 3-0. Encouraging signs, particularly in the second test, less so on this one. Some good player performances. At the end of the day, this series was less so about testing ourselves against one of the best teams in the world, and more so about, all right, well, we should win these 3 tests. Let's test out some combinations. Let's test out some players. Let's throw some guys in the fire, see how they go. And from all of that, for me, the likes of Fabian Holland, Timothy Tavatavanawai, and Will Jordan, know that already, Severis very much, and Noel Hotham, who've all sort of stood up in parts. Hotham, I just thought, had some really nice moments to love. So really happy to see that. I think Brodie McAllister was reliable at line-out time, so those are some really good takeaways from his third test. Apart from that, not spectacular. The Argentina test will be a much better measure of where this team is at. And obviously we've got the Springbok test after that. But I'm a bit glass half empty about this Hamilton performance. But, the series at the end of the day, as I say, I don't think was ever going to be the greatest indication of where this team is at. But I wouldn't have minded a little bit more. But at the end of the day, 3-0. New Zealand has won it. That's all that matters. Bring on the Rugby Championship. And then bring on those 2 Springboks tests.
DSPN.